Hello, and welcome to our Sacred Wisdom podcast. And welcome back to 4 guests who have been on our podcast before, but not together. Thank you for joining us again, Magenta and her husband Daniel, and another husband and wife team, Poppy and Geoff. Today we have a unique topic to discuss, the divine masculine and divine feminine. Over to Chris.
Thank you, Becky, and welcome back, Magenta, Daniel, Poppy, and Geoff, and thank you for joining us for this exciting topic. We're hoping today to explore this topic from many different aspects. What does the divine masculine and divine feminine mean? What does it look like? How does it work in relationships? What causes imbalances? And what can we do about them? And really any other aspects that any of you would like to bring up. So a couple of initial thoughts. Many believe that the divine masculine and the divine feminine are two parts of the same whole. And today, when we talk about divine masculine and divine feminine energies, we're referring to universal energies. And so even though these terms are often associated with gender, we are not necessarily referring to gender. And that's because we all have both divine masculine and divine feminine qualities, and both are essential to life. So male energy cannot exist without female energy, and female energy cannot exist without male energy. So this is going to be a great topic, and I'm going to hand to Becky to get us started.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so I'll start this topic off with tarot, because tarot clearly depicts the different archetypes of divine masculine and divine feminine. Tarot has the major arcana, which starts off with a Fool card, and that depicts the journey of the person in question. The minor arcana is like the suits in a pack of cards, ranging from the Ace up to the King in 4 different suits. So the wands are like clubs and represent spirit and the element of fire. The cups are like hearts and represent emotions and the element of water. The swords are like spades and represent the mental or intelligent aspect and the element of air. The discs or pentacles are like diamonds and represent the physical aspect and the element of earth. So you can see that the earth is physical, air is mental, water is emotional, and fire is spirit. Now, at the top of these suits, you have the king and the queen, and the prince and the princess. The king is a more mature masculine and represents fiery aspects or traits. The queen is a more mature feminine and represents watery or emotional traits. The prince is the less mature masculine and represents airy or mental traits. And the princess is the less mature feminine and represents the earthly or physical traits. So, combining these 4 divine masculine and feminine personality types with a combination of the different suits, wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, you get a different combination of qualities, but also the shadow side elements. And these are used to depict different character types, either within yourself, to give you greater insight into your own divine masculine and feminine attributes, or they may depict another person who is in question in your reading. The point for me is that between the 4 suits and the 4 characters of king, queen, prince, and princess, they cover the whole gamut of divine masculine and divine feminine qualities, and they also cover the relative shadow side of each. So you can easily see which personality type has which qualities and which are the associated shadow sides. For example, the King of Wands is the fiery part of fire. He is typically a man of activity, generosity, pride, and swiftness. His shadow side is cruelty, bigotry, and petulance. The Queen of Wands is the watery part of fire. So here we are including emotions with spirit. She is a woman of adaptability, persistent energy, calm authority, powers of attraction, and generous. Her shadow side includes intolerance, obstinacy, revenge, and dominance. The Prince of Wands is the airy part of fire, a young man, swift and strong, impulsive, just, noble, and generous, with a sense of humour. But he is also proud, intolerant, cruel, violent, cowardly, and prejudiced. The Princess of Wands represents the earthly part of fire. She is an energetic young woman, brilliant and daring, expressive in love or anger, and enthusiastic. She can also be superficial, theatrical, shallow, cruel, unreliable, and faithless. So this is an example of the 4 character divine masculine and divine feminine archetypes within the suit of wands, which represent fire and spirit. Each of the other suits have the relative king, queen, prince, princess, divine masculine and feminine archetypes. And of course, when relating to a person, they don't necessarily have all of the positive qualities and all of the shadow aspects, nor are they necessarily just one archetype, but far more often a unique mix of them. This does show, however, which shadow aspects can go with which qualities. And with this long introduction, I shall hand over to Magenta. Hi, Magenta.
Hi, Becky. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone here. Yes, I mean, everything you've said is basically exactly what the 9 have taught me about the masculine and the feminine. It is interesting that they've always, right from day one, referred to them as the divine feminine and the sacred masculine, whereas most people do say divine feminine and divine masculine. Daniel did actually ask me this morning, why is it divine feminine and sacred masculine? That's what you always say. And I said, to be honest, I don't actually know why they said that. I have actually asked them, and I can talk about that. But they basically said everything that you said, Chris, about this being an energy, a frequency, and the archetype being a physical presentation for us to be able to understand and connect with that frequency behind that archetype. For example, they use an archetype to represent the awakened consciousness of humanity. So every awakened soul, and the archetype on the masculine is Archangel Michael, well known, and the archetype they use for the feminine is the divine princess Aurora. So they also speak about the divine grandmother, the divine granddaughter, showing the different phases of creation as it goes down in that fractal. So I'm not sure if this is all off topic slightly, but seeing as Daniel asked the question, why divine feminine and sacred masculine when no one else seems to say that? And I said, well, I just don't know. But since I've been speaking to them all these years, that's what they've said. So I asked them earlier today, I said, you know, why do you refer to the feminine as divine and the masculine as sacred? And I'm mentioning it because it is interesting what they responded, because it is very much about this frequency and giving that frequency a pattern or a template through geometry. So what they actually said was, divine is the construction, the architecture, the creation when looking at divine geometry or pre-matter blueprint. So what you're looking at before something becomes physical, that's the feminine presentation of the template, of the blueprint, before that falls into the physical realm. But sacred is the charge needed for the construction and the creation to take place. The charge is needed for any creation, and that includes ascension. If you look at ascension as a creation, which it is, it's a creation of all that's new on all these levels. And the charge needed for that, for ascension, is masculine. The movement through ascension and the experiential process itself is feminine. And without this balance in place, then ascension cannot occur. So what they're saying is, whether it's a planet, whether it's the galaxy, or whether it's a structure such as a human, we can't go through an ascension process without that balance in place. And as you said, Chris, it isn't about gender. It's not about gender at all. It's about the frequency, finding the balance between the masculine and the feminine. What is also very topical about today's discussion, being on the 4th of May, is that tomorrow we have a lunar eclipse. And the lunar eclipse, the moon, is feminine. And I asked the 9, why is the divine feminine so important today, tomorrow, and on Saturday? Because you have like a 3-day, even though these eclipse energies are lasting for much longer, you do get a 3-day window. And, you know, why is the divine feminine so important in these 3 days? Today, us recording today. And they said the feminine is the subconscious, the moon, the lunar, and you are in the portal or gateway you know as lunar eclipse. This is the time of the moon goddess, the lady of the lake, or queen of the moon. So these are archetypes the 9 use, but they are very much in alignment with everything you said, Becky, that's in the tarot. It's just the way they're presenting the archetypes. The tarot is presenting those archetypes as well, exactly. And they went on to say, this is the rising of the subconscious, that which is hidden, to show herself, the subconscious being feminine. Therefore, it is of most import to acknowledge the divine feminine aspect at the time of the lunar eclipse for subconscious and ascension experience and processing of that experience. So if it were a solar eclipse, we would want to acknowledge that divine masculine or sacred masculine and acknowledge the feminine at this time. So there's so much that can be said about this subject. I mean, it's vast and so very important. But before I stop talking and pass to someone else, I would just like to say that in honor of this talk that we're doing today and the divine feminine, especially because of the lunar eclipse tomorrow, I have a meditation that was channeled from the 9 years ago, and it's in my meditation bundle that's for sale on my website. However, I would like to offer that one particular meditation, Divine Feminine Goddess Awakening. I'd like to offer that to everyone for free who's been listening to this show. Would just pop it up on the website for a limited period of time. In fact, we thought 9 days. So from tomorrow to the 13th of May, if you go to my website, magentapixie.com, you will see Divine Feminine Goddess Awakening meditation there for free download. And the energy within that meditation specifically was created in order to pass codes and keys and frequencies to the listener to awaken that divine feminine within. And the perfect time to do that meditation is always around a lunar eclipse. So everything seems to have come together in quite a divine synchronicity for this podcast today, I feel.
Thank you, Magenta. That's absolutely wonderful. So who would like to speak next? Poppy and Geoff or Daniel? Daniel? Okay. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, thanks for inviting me back on the show. And it was perfect that you started off talking about the tarot, Becky, because I didn't know you were going to reference that. But I was pondering on this last night, and I was not in a tarot sense, but I was thinking about the different archetypes that we have as just a species of human, with the overarching kind of influence of what is the kind of biological norm in this reality, i.e. masculine, feminine, male, female. And then I was thinking about all the examples within that intuitively as a society at large we've come to identify, and obviously that has been picked up and refined and studied and is presented in the tarot, like you're saying, when you can, everyone seems to understand the correct and corrupt presentation of different kinds of people at different kinds of ages. You're talking about the princess and the king and maturity, and when it goes dark, and this is echoed in other traditions. I'm sure Magenta will talk about the dark Kali in Hinduism. I know she's talked about that quite a bit. But I was thinking, like, so classically, you know, if most people, if you just say to them the word mother or father or sister, brother, aunt, uncle, son, it's like we all instinctively know how that dynamic and that relationship presents and why it is so wonderful and unique when it's working well and it's in harmony, because it's like this just resonant thing when you just say the word mother or father or brother, and what quantifies what is a good example of that. And then going further out, I was thinking about other archetypes in our society that everyone recognizes, even far-flung societies, like a teacher, a doctor, an athlete, a scholar, even a neighbor. What quantifies a good neighbor? And I was thinking, like, a good kind of baseline, if you're talking about what constitutes the divine feminine or the divine masculine or sacred masculine, is a good baseline to work from is when you can recognize that something is out of kilter. And I was thinking back, like, even if you haven't been exposed to any kind of analysis through traditional psychology or through looking at more esoteric stuff like the tarot, from a child, I think, there's this amazing quote. I can't remember which movie it's from, but it's the quote was something like, because children expect nothing, they see everything, which means they're not, as children, and because they're innocent, they're not bogged down by the preconceptions of society or dogma that's got into their head through what they've been told by other people around them. So I was thinking, my personal experience, when I was a kid, and like everybody, you know, you're born, you're just this blob, and you're vulnerable, and your world is shaped, and you're literally physically moved from place to place and talked to by all the different adults and, you know, and siblings maybe around you. And you formulate over time instinctively these feelings and these associations. And I think when I think back, I could quickly identify, like, when you're a child, you can kind of extend that quality to all your friends' mums, and you just know who's a good maternal figure in your friendship group, of whose mum's nice and whose mum maybe isn't. And then that goes into like infant school, and I can still remember at infant school, your early experiences, you almost they become your surrogate parents in a way for the time that you're there in the school day. And I can still distinctly remember the feelings of my teacher. I must have been very small, and one day she just got really cross with another classmate, and it shook me to my core. And in that instance, it's like it was shattered, this maternal, lovely, comfortable energy I just kind of transitioned to from my family to going to school. And it really shook me. And I think as you grow up, you can quite quickly, you can't, I think it's hard sometimes for people to necessarily think, right, what quantifies divine masculine or feminine, as if it's like a fixed thing. And obviously there's multiple nuanced presentations through everyone. That's what makes diversity and people's different personalities wonderful. But I think if it's almost like this almost untouchable but sacred, fluid concept. And you, like I say, a good baseline is like, you know when it's not working. You know when a guy is acting out of integrity, or a teacher is bad, or a doctor doesn't have a good bedside manner. And you think, you know, if only, if I, and I mean, we've recently been taking our cat to the vet, and we've had vets in the past who've been cold and just, you wonder why they're in a job. We've been blessed though, this last week, 2 wonderful ladies. And to me, that's a perfect example of a healer, of a carer, of somebody working in medicine, because they're all also maternal. And it's like, every time we go to the vet, which is, you know, thankfully rarely, I'm always slightly on edge. Who are we going to get? So we've been blessed this time around, and I thought it's all just come together like that when I was pondering on this last night. You can, when you meet people and you spend some time with them, whether you're consciously quantifying it. I mean, obviously you don't want to meet someone and start analyzing them and you know, making notes on their psychology, but I think everybody instinctively knows this is an example of a comfortable, flowing, male or female presentation, or somebody who's in a particular role. And obviously male teachers, female teachers, very different flavors within their teaching style and the energetic they have with their students. So yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of open with, that I think even if you can't really conceptualize what is divine masculine, feminine, not in a negative way, I'm not saying look for the negative, but I think that's a good baseline to work from, because all of our ideas as we grow up, oftentimes, you know, it's inevitable as you mature from infancy to adolescence to adulthood, you're going to be presented with every type of person, every type of social interaction. And over time, I think a lot of people, you do actually collectively kind of land on, this is an example of a great guy. This is an example of a good brother. This is an example of a good neighbor. And that's universal, and it's almost unspoken. You don't need to really, it's hard to quantify what it is. It just feels right. And like, I do remember when I was first got online, I was in a chat room, and whereas the terms divine masculine and feminine are very much a staple that some people can throw around, almost like just kind of, you know, it's just terminology. A lot of people just kind of throw it around, just showing off their spirituality. Oh, we have to say kundalini, we have to say sacred, this, that, and the other. And it's like, maybe not because they're being pretentious, but I think they're just trying to fit in and just like throw every fashionable phrase into the mix. But when you actually look at it, it's well, let me just explain. When I first got online and I was talking to all these people, and it's just a mad chat room, I feel now in retrospect have this unrealistic view of the woman, the female, and it's like I held them in such great esteem. I mean, in college, most of my friends were girls, and it's like I put them on such a high pedestal, which I still do. Of course, I honor women, like massively, but it's almost like it got to a degree where I almost thought they were better than men, and I had unrealistic views towards guys as well, probably because I've just been more comfortable talking to girls. And I remember I had this crazy notion that when women fell out with each other, they had an altercation or an argument, there was this penetrating kind of agreed on sisterhood that women can always make up. It's only in later years I've seen that women have a very, very unique and long-term vengeance when they fall out with other women, that men find it really hard to understand. And even when they make up, they will remember the details, and they will carry, this is some women, you know, we're talking about the dark aspect. Some women will carry this burning rage and vengeance for years, and they will remember it. And I was completely naive to this up until I was about 20, 22, 23. And I'd see certain people in my friendship group fall out with each other, and it would just go in a direction that I don't think men could have the first inclination and the endurance to hold a certain kind of hatred for 10 years regarding, and I say it in a comical way, but also, you know, obviously men, when that goes weird, they can have this horrible, corrupt energy. I mean, that's another archetype, the bully. When you're at school, unfortunately, everybody has come across a bully, and girls can bully in very unique ways to their fellow classmates. And whereas guys are more often physical, and it's more, you know, in the open. So my point is that I had an unrealistic and unformed conception of what quantifies the divine feminine, divine masculine. And I remember in the chat room one day, and I was talking about, oh, you know, just women are better than men, and the energies and the moon and everything. So I was kind of into looking at Wicca at the time. And I remember this guy out of the blue in capital letters saying, you need to embrace the horns God within you. And I was like, well, I was really taken aback what he meant by that. But he'd obviously been looking to my chat for like ages. And I think he was just, not in a mean way, but I think he was just trying to kind of coach me that I needed to embody some of that wonderful masculinity in myself. And then I would actually be more complimentary and more realistic in how much I honored and appreciated women. So that was curious. I think since then, it's kind of balanced out, and I guess that's the hope with us all, that we can over time start to identify, hopefully, and bring into our lives friendships and associates and maybe, you know, work opportunities with the most fitting kind of people, which in itself is formed out of an understanding and recognition of different archetypes, whether they be masculine, feminine, work colleagues, whatever. So that's what I've observed. So there you go.
I was waiting for you, Chris, because I saw your arm move forwards. I'm happy. I'll say that, yeah, Daniel, that's amazing, and it's made me think of so many different things, which I will come to a bit later, because I want Poppy and Geoff to have their say on this. So welcome, Poppy and Geoff.
Thank you. And Daniel, we've experienced a lot of what you just talked about. It was funny when we were like, yeah, we know that little game. Yep, sure, yep.
Thank you so much, Becky and Chris and Magenta and Daniel, for having us join in with you. It's really
great to be here.
Wonderful to be here. Daniel, just touching on the last series of wonderful inspirations that you shared. I have 3 daughters and 1 son, and but I myself grew up in a home that was pretty male oriented. I just have 1 brother, and my parents, you know, believed that the male essence is most important. And so I was always kind of hiding that little thing. So whenever I took, and fear was a lot of our external influences in my life growing up. And so whenever I took a circuitous path to go like off the driven path, becoming an artist, having no judgment, it was really a wonderful path, but it was also kind of scary because that wasn't expected. So it's like, why didn't you become this instead of an artist or a teacher or something else? But I just remember saying that to my youngest several years ago. We were living in Florida, kind of caregiving with my mother, and I saw how women in their 80s were still doing much of what you spoke about, of this petty, you know, stabbing each other in the back kind of thing. And I didn't understand that as a young girl growing up. I didn't understand, you know, if my brother was irritated with me, I knew exactly why he was irritated.
Guy would just punch you and say, you're an idiot, you know?
And so I didn't understand the nuance, the subtleties, the mercurial kind of behavior that happened. And so I ended up choosing to go to a girls' school for 2 years, a college, to figure it out. It's like, I didn't get it. I didn't understand that you didn't speak your truth all the time, you know, that there were subtleties that occurred. So that was really helpful. And I remember telling my youngest daughter when she was in high school and she was 15 and she was talking about girls stuff. And I was like, oh, sweetie, just get ready, because it'll happen throughout your life. It
doesn't stop.
You know, we just experienced that with your 82-year-old grandmother, you know, so it does happen. And I do think that was totally externally influenced by our society, by the way we were raised, to create that lessening and diminishing of the woman, the feminine spirit, to keep them submissive, to keep them. And so I think when that pettiness and that cattiness comes out, it's a woman trying to find that empowerment, trying to find that divine feminine that has been snuffed out so many times by external forces. And so it's only when you go within and reflect and get to that point where you say, okay, wait a minute, I need to embrace that part. And even the shadow part, like you spoke of, and say, hey, am I exhibiting this jealousy, this behavior, this pettiness, or can I do something about it? And of course, yes, you can.
Yeah, it was funny when we were talking about this topic earlier. I was kind of searching my thoughts. What's the best thing to talk about? And it just kind of hit me as we were starting this call. When we were younger, first of all, our story, for those who don't know,
we did this once before.
We did it before, but it's important to tell the story. Poppy and I were college sweethearts, okay? And unfortunately, we got split up because, and here's where the rub is, we did not have a handle on any of this, did not have an understanding of, if I had any clue of, people say, well, why did you break up? I always kind of flippantly say, because I was stupid. But what it was is I didn't have any handle on my divine masculinity. If I had any understanding of it, I would have summoned the courage.
I think you had divine masculinity. You didn't have divine feminine.
Well, they're both. If I'd had the masculine portion where I was saying, this doesn't make any sense, this is not logical, I should assert myself here and say, this is not correct, the misunderstanding we were having. And yes, I should have tapped into the divine feminine to soften and be vulnerable about it and realize it isn't what it really appears to be. And I know we can get beyond this. I didn't have any understanding of those things. So I think so many times relationships, and this is kind of, Chris, goes back to what you started with, how do relationships get in trouble? And so many times because we don't have a handle on this at all. It's something we don't get. Guys feel like they have to have some sort of an image of being tough or strong, and get very, very illogical and very overly aggressive, and aren't able to tap back into the feminine sides and be gentle and soft and vulnerable. Vulnerability, we always have talked about many times in our coaching, is something that is a critical aspect of making a relationship work. So I think that in a quick nutshell is, if you understand those concepts, well, you can deal with so many things better in life, especially relationships.
And I think we were apart for 32 years, had other spouses and children.
Two each.
And so, but we had no contact for 32 years. And I always liken it to like, we were really together, and then we both took these other paths, and then we came back together again, sort of like this shape. And
hopefully having a good understanding of these things finally.
And we often say, I think we were always together in a parallel universe, in another dimension.
I'm sure we were.
And that had we stayed together when we were first loves, we would probably be underdeveloped spiritually, emotionally, and boring. I think,
and we'd be asleep right now. We wouldn't be on the show.
We probably would have had jobs, whatever. But we each took that thing, and my embrace. I was very embedded in emotions most of my life, and I think whenever I started to take a risk, and then it just happened, this pattern of taking risks and going outside the box, and that really helped to embrace that. So I think that balance that you both spoke about, that you all spoke about, is so critical, and being able to do that. And as coaches, as an art therapist, as family law mediators, we have to hold that space of both the divine and masculine. And even in CC, with working with teams and members, we have to be able to hold the space
back and forth
for when those sort of undesirable shadow things come into play. We have to be able to maintain that, still have compassion, but still have the strength and the resolve to make sure that we're keeping a safe space
for everybody.
So,
okay.
Thanks.
And thank you, Poppy and Geoff and Daniel and Magenta. Gosh, there's so many amazing points that were brought up here. I'm going to touch on just a couple. But first, Magenta, thank you for your beautiful offer for that meditation. I'll definitely be downloading that. That's a very generous offer. So I would encourage everybody who's listening to download, and what beautiful timing. So Poppy and Geoff, I love your relationship story, and I think it's archetypal might not be the right phrase, but I think a lot of couples go through that where either they start together and you have your own journey and then you end up together, or my husband and I joke that if we had met in our 20s, we both had relationships before, like we wouldn't have even given each other a second look, right? And so for whatever reason, we both needed to have certain experiences without the other before we ended up together in this lifetime. So I also, Geoff, when you were talking, so I did some research on what does a wounded feminine and masculine look like, and what does a healthy feminine and masculine look like. And when you were talking about, what went wrong, I was thinking, so the wounded and masculine is very emotional, aggressive, can be controlling, puts others down, competitive, insecure. Whereas the healthy masculine energy is confident, humble, accountable, honest, decisive, sets boundaries, and secure. And so listening to you talk, about your journey from going from kind of the wounded space into the healthy space when you both got back together. And it's the same thing on the feminine side, that the wounded can be like low self-esteem, being too attached, drowning in emotions, victimhood, needing to be saved. And the healthy is feminine, who speaks a truth, connected to intuition, embraces vulnerability, is creative, grounded, compassionate, and empathetic. And most of us, I was going to say we don't start out that way, but I'm going to go back to Daniel. I love how you compared this topic to a child, because children, that quote that you gave was amazing, because children, they don't start out with expectations, or they don't know all these archetypes. They just are who they are. And I see this with my 5-year-old grandson. Like, he just finds beauty in absolutely everything. And every once in a while, I'm in a rush, or I'm trying to do something a particular way, and I feel like, okay, stop, like look at the world through his little eyes, and it's just beautiful and magical. So I'd like to circle back and throw out to the groove. As we grow, we've all touched on this, we become wounded, right? Poppy talked about childhood experiences, as teenagers, we certainly are all, experience things. And so we have these wounds and traumas that need to be healed over time. And, I think like learning, getting to know yourself, is like one of the best things that you can do, because awareness is definitely key, but that's much easier said than done. So I'm going to throw out to the groove your thoughts on kind of healing the wounded aspects of the feminine and masculine energies that are in all of us.
Can I jump in first? Chris, I love that sort of summary and picking points up from everybody. That's beautiful. Some of the things that I was thinking about with what everyone was talking about and is relevant now is, what are the things that affect our personality types anyway? I mean, we know we have unique souls, and they already have certain characteristics. We're born into a body with very specific DNA. And also when and where we're born, the astrology behind it all, where the planets were and so on during birth. And then the phenotype, the influences that happen to you throughout your life, all of these things affect one's personality type, and it's not fixed, it's fluid, and it changes. As you say, it can change throughout life, and with real self-awareness and self-reflection, which tends to happen as we grow more mature, and we're getting experiences under our belt, and then realizing that if we do things a certain way, it's just we're never going to get anywhere. So let's change how we do things, let's change how we think about things. Keeping an open mind as well helps, and doing the shadow work. But also there's certain stages that I once read a book, and I wish I could remember the author's name, because it's a book I highly would recommend, but it was a long time ago that I read it. And it talks about the 5 different stages in a man's life. And they are the page, when the boy is young, and the page then turns into the knight, and that's when he starts to mature and become, you know, a risk taker, and starts to sort of explore his surroundings, push boundaries, start having relationships. And then the knight turns into the prince when he wants to start to settle down with the, you know, the partner of choice, and maybe think about, you know, where they're going to live, starting a family, getting married, all that sort of thing. So that's like the prince phase. And then you know, fast forward 10-15 years, when you've got, you know, kids who are teenagers, that's when the prince sort of matures into the king, who's a bit wiser and is sort of king of his castle, and that's the sort of mature side of the man. And then for some men, you know, they can become really exceptionally wise in a more community-based way, and these are known as sages. So not every king becomes a sage. And of course the time span varies, because, you know, some knights want to stay knights for decades and don't want to settle down into the prince. You know, they might go very quickly from knight to king rather than settle into the prince phase for a decade and a half. So I love that phase, because it talks about the transition of sacred masculine and, you know, the cycle. And for divine feminine, I think, you know, when you hear it, when you explore the shamanic side of things especially, but there's three main divine feminine archetypes, and that's the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And they, you know, relate closely to the divine masculine phases as well. But maiden is obviously pre-childbirth, mother is childbirth, and then an older woman, usually grandmotherish age, is the crone. So I just wanted to share those different time-related aspects to the phases of a life cycle, and also the different factors that influence our own personality types. So again, I will then throw that out for someone to pick that up on. Okay, Daniel, hi.
I loved what you were saying there about and what other members of the group were saying about there needs to be kind of a fluid approach as well, because a human being isn't just one thing in all situations or at all stages of their lives. And for me, if I'd have only I wouldn't want to be a teenager again. I know a lot of people say, like, oh, I wish I could go back and do things differently. But I think I've learned to just trust the process, and whatever experiences that have happened to you, and the teenage years are so hectic for just about everyone. I don't think anybody gets off easy with your developing brain and your body, and just seeing what's going on around you. So many random thoughts and feelings crammed into your brain that you can barely process. It's like you're being downloaded with some new version of Windows, and you don't have the hardware to make it run well, and it's just glitching all of the time. And some people get into bad situations, or, you know, substance abuse or whatever. For me, I was so painfully shy at comprehensive school, and whereas I could look back and think, oh wow, I wish I had the confidence now to just chill out and stop beating myself up and comparing myself to other guys. And as I was saying before, I held girls in such high esteem because they were just so graceful and beautiful. And it's like I was in love with 100 different girls at my school, and they never knew about it. They never knew about it. And if I ever started to like a girl, it's like any friendship I had with her previously went out the window because I was so painfully shy. My love basically meant I had to avoid her like the plague. If I even saw her on the other side of the playground, a tiny little dot, my heart would start beating. I'd be red and flushed and sweating. And the only way I could communicate with these girls who I loved would be in my room in the middle of the night, trying to communicate with them psychically, and then looking at the next day, trying to figure out if I had the confidence to get close enough to them, if they'd picked up my amazing message. And I was really confused by the time I got to comprehensive school. you know, different people in my tutor group, they you know, they'd go out with each other. I don't know if that's what the kids still call it, going out. And most of the time, you know, 3 weeks would be a long relationship when you're like, you know, 14. But I didn't go with anyone. The thought of it, or if somebody suggested, oh, so-and-so fancies you, I would either think they were being sarcastic or they were mistaken. So I was so painfully shy, but I would not go back and do it again, because we're talking about archetypes. During my formative years from about 14 to 20, I was, even though outwardly a lot of people probably thought I was quite funny and sociable, it was very much the kind of the path of the hermit in a way, because I'd spend so long just sitting in my room in the dark, just listening to Pink Floyd and just exploring concepts and notions and feelings in my head. And in retrospect, at the time, I actually felt desperately lonely. But I think even then I knew I was developing something, and I wouldn't do it any differently now, because the expression of masculinity to me, or my own particular, you know, flavor of personality, that was developing then. So I would say to any young people who are so like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm feeling, I remember often thinking, I don't even know step one in how to feel more confident in any scenario. Whenever I went to a party, the moment I got through a door, I just wanted to die. It was just horrible, just on the edge of panic all the time. And, you know, in retrospect, nobody was looking at me anyway. It was just doing it to myself. But through that trial by fire, if you like, that I'd done to myself, in a weird way, well, I'm hoping this is a hope, I'm hoping that I can avoid a midlife crisis, because I had such a bad time beating myself up. So maybe I got it out of the way when I was like 20 or something. So I think there's massive variance within, as it should be. You know, creation loves variety. So my own particular path towards divine masculinity, if that I could ever achieve that, I mean, it's for other people to identify, really. It's nice sometimes when people see Magenta and I on our group, they will compliment us by saying divine masculine, divine feminine. I feel a little bit embarrassed. I mean, it's lovely, but how could one person hope to embody that? So I think the divine masculine, divine feminine energy that we can tap into and draw from, whether you can actually be the divine masculine or feminine, maybe that shouldn't be the aim. Maybe, and just like anything, you know, you can't claim to ever be a genius as such. It's okay for other people to call you that, but you know, the genius, the information, it's a flow you get into the realm of ideas and processing. So that's what I'd like to highlight, really, that the path can be unique and exceptional and tough for both men and women as we grow and we develop into our own particular style. I never thought I'd have the confidence to do things online with Magenta. I was behind the scenes like forever since she started in 2008, just editing. And the one good thing, well, there's probably many good things, but for me in particular, during lockdown, I got more involved in front of the camera, sometimes silly, sometimes serious, like here. And by the time it actually came around, I had a confidence that I didn't even know I'd been developing that whole time. So it didn't feel like jumping in at the deep end. It wasn't like that feeling like I would go into a party and I'm just devastated. By the time I actually started doing stuff online with Magenta, it just kind of flowed and it was all right. So I think that's important. You might be developing a confidence or an ability, all of us, that you don't even know you had, and it's been refining and just kind of processing in your mind, in your spirit, the whole time. So I'd encourage anybody. I hate the phrase "you need to get out of your comfort zone," because that's almost like like a bird shoving the baby out of the nest. I've never liked that term, get out of your comfort zone, but I understand the kind of essence behind that. What I'm saying for me is, once I actually went into certain things which I thought I'd be uncomfortable about, I've actually been pleasantly surprised that I'd been developing the skills that whole time. So that's my closing thing here. I would encourage anybody to just open themselves up and chill out, mainly chill out about doing new things or talking to new people, because most people, when you actually talk to them, they can be just as nervous about talking to you. Oh, they're judging me. Oh, I can't let there be an uncomfortable silence. And that can stay with you if you've had bad experiences, particularly in your teenage years. But I've met friends from college now who I thought were really confident and cool at the time, and now they say, no, it was a mess. I thought you were really chilled. I was like, what are you talking about? I was neurotic. So it's interesting to see how we can all be quite good actors as well. I guess the aim is to actually try and authentically encapsulate that divine masculine or divine feminine, whilst at the same time not beating ourselves up and comparing ourselves to what we imagine are examples of other people, because you might find out they're going through the same crazy journey trying to figure out their own essence as well. Yeah.
I'm going to hop in again here. I absolutely love what you've said. I love the fact that how you've described your journey, and mine's been very similar, because, you know, Simon was always the one in front of the camera and I was behind the scenes helping, you know, develop and grow Connecting Consciousness. And so I've very slowly, bit by bit, and I think it just started off by hosting the meetings with coordinators, and that's one way of being on a Zoom meeting where I'm, you know, managing it and hosting it and running it and you know, encouraging others to speak. And also from that, I've seen our coordinators worldwide, they've all developed, because coordinators, they come and they say, oh yeah, I'd love to come and help, you know, what shall I do? And it just started off really basic, and it got more and more structured and involved, and they need more and more qualifications and skills, and they've been developing them. And I've seen some of our coordinators from 5 years back, or 5, 6, 7 years back, still in the role, and they have grown so much. They've grown in their confidence, they've grown in their level of skills, whether it's, you know, facilitation, problem solving, just all kinds of things. And I absolutely love that. And yeah, you know, and the thing with divine masculine and divine feminine, I personally believe that we all have it in us. We all do. We all have the divine creational spark. We're all made from God, source. And we also all have our good days and our bad days. So I know when you were talking a bit earlier about, you know, oh, you know, you can have like a teacher who's really lovely, but then they're suddenly really nasty. She was probably having a bad day, pushed to the end of her limits. So the vast majority of the time, she is a lovely person, but then once in a while, somebody will trigger her, and she will just be like you know, seem really nasty and really scary and unpredictable. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? We as we grow through our lives, we start to learn more about ourselves by the way we react to different situations, circumstances, people, triggers. And that is like a reflection to us, showing us, you know, who we are, because not everyone reacts the same way to the same stimulus. We all react in slightly different ways. And I think that's the beauty of creation here on earth, is that we are given like an unlimited pot every day, where we're given different circumstances, situations, which enable us to hone our skills in developing perhaps the personality traits and qualities that we would like, that may not come so easily to us. So that's just another thought to throw out there.
Sure.
We love everything you said, Daniel, and I noticed something when
You got to stay off the dark side of the moon, though, with Pink Floyd, though, okay?
I went to a high school reunion a number of years back, and you know, I was engaged and feeling more confident, And it was all females. All of my female friends were like, wow, you used to be so quiet. You used to be really shy. And I was like, oh, so somewhere along that way, I too came out and embraced that spirit that was supposed to be there. And I think that when you talk about reaching in, and sometimes it's unconscious and subconscious that these things come out. When Jeff and I, when he first called after no contact for 32 years, he left with the understanding that neither of us cared about the other. We both thought that. When I realized it was him, the words just came out of my mouth. They were unfiltered, they were uncensored, they just came. And I'm sure you've all had that experience where you say something and you go like, who just said that? Where did those words come from? And that was what we experienced.
Speaking from the heart, not censoring, not overthinking it.
Yes.
And it was right from the heart.
And that was that divine feminine that we believe. And in the writing of our book, we actually coined and trademarked the phrase cognitive bypass, which is speaking from the heart, speaking from that vulnerable
not
place,
overthinking.
And not even thinking at all, but just speaking your truth as it's coming from within the deepest realms of oneself. And I just thought that was really neat. And when you were talking before about how your friends will see you and perceive you, we believe, of course, that we give off the perception that others will see us at. And we hold this up a lot, Becky, and when we're in with CC people, coordinators who don't feel that confidence, who don't feel that sure-footedness. And so we just hold up a little mirror here and say, that's, I think, one of our best skills is that we bring to the table is showing people their great potential, those inner things that they aren't able to access and see right now, but they're able to hear it from us as like, this is who we see you, we hear you, and this is how we do that. So I think that's one of our best gifts that we can offer, is to hold up that mirror to see that inner strength and compassion and empathy that we have. So thank you.
I love that, Poppy and Daniel. I think what you said, probably every single person listening can relate to that, and probably many, many times throughout one's life. And one thing that I wanted to share, somebody told me a long time ago, I was all worked up about doing something, and I honestly don't even remember what it was right now, but someone told me the only person who's judging you is you. And that always stuck with me, because I think, we're all different. We all do things in different ways. And I've thought about that so much over the years, although it took me a really long time to stop judging myself, when we all probably do it still a little bit, but I do think about that often. And so I would throw that out there to everyone who's listening to this. When you think about that, the only person who's judging you is you. Then you step back and say, well, why am I judging me, right? Like, I'm doing the best that I can. I'm putting myself out there. I'm trying something new, right? Like there's no reason to, judge us. We tend to be our own worst critics. So.
Magenta, any last words from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, listening to everyone, what everyone is talking about here, and you asked Chris about how to heal from the distorted masculine and feminine. What actually happens when you're born, all the experiences that everyone's talking about, you go through your life looking to find that masculine energy, find that feminine energy, and embody that, because that's the journey of source. That's the journey to go back to the oneness, the androgynous consciousness, if you will. You can't find that androgynous all one consciousness without individualizing the compartmentalized aspects of yourself. And so you do that by embodying the masculine and embodying the feminine in balance. And when you're born into this world, you are looking to identify, as Daniel was saying, as a child, And what you have in front of you are your caregivers and your teachers, your parents. But because we're in a third dimensional reality, none of those role models have either found the full balanced masculine and feminine. There may be some that have found that to a point, and you'll be lucky to have parents that will embody that. But for the great majority of people, their parents are also on that journey, because it is moving through fourth and into the fifth dimension when you embody these things. So unless you have a not fully, but certainly on the path to fifth dimension or some kind of expanded awareness, you are going to be identifying with a flawed or distorted divine masculine and divine feminine, or sacred masculine, in some form, whether it's your teacher, as Daniel said, your teacher, your parents. You're going to be looking for that, and it can be a terrible, devastating shock to the system, because deep intrinsically inside, you are looking for the nurturing, receptivity, and full healing, care and love from the feminine energy, and you are looking for the strength and the protector from the masculine energy. And in many ways, it is more difficult for the male child moving into the male path. As Becky was saying about the prince, you move from the prince to the king, and it's very much a journey. And I remember somebody saying this to me years ago from a book that they had read. There was a very good metaphor, and the metaphor was, if you're walking along by a river and you are a girl, you're walking with your mother, and you are always on the same side of the river as her. You don't have to cross that river to become who you're supposed to be. You're walking along with your mother. You remain with the mother. And if you look at society and you look at, say, when a couple get married, who is the most, usually, not always, there's always an exception to the rule, but who is the majority family that you see? It's usually the woman's parents. It's usually the female's family that becomes sort of the main person. Not always, as I've said. And when a woman gets married, a mother doesn't look at her daughter and think, "Oh, I've lost my daughter. You know, she's married this man." Again, exceptions to the rule, but usually it's like, "Oh, my daughter's getting married. I'm her mother. I'm going to be part of this, mother of the bride." It's very, very different with a boy, because that boy is connecting with another divine feminine, moving away from mother to the wife. And this is the journey. The woman doesn't take that journey in the same way. So what the male does is, when he's walking across that river, he's with his mother and his sisters, but his father is over the other side of the river. That's because the boy has to take a journey to become a man, from the prince to the king. He has to cross that river, and that is a much more difficult journey for the male, because it's a different movement. And as a child, we're looking to identify with these energies. We end up with this distortion, as Daniel was saying, this crushing feeling when he realized that these females that he was putting in the highest of regard were not what he thought they were, and he had somehow pushed his own masculinity to one side, believing that the feminine is more powerful. Now, what Daniel didn't realize at the time, he was right in a way, energetically. The male is supposed to bow down, if you will, to allow the female to be glorified. But this is balanced energy. This is creative energy. If you look at ballet dancers, the male, you need a very, very well-trained, strong, extremely talented, technical ballet dancer in a male. If you do not have that, then you will not see a decent performance. But who is it that you are looking at? When the male lifts the female up in the air, are you looking at the man? Of course not. You're looking at the female up there in her pose. But she couldn't get up there without the man. So Daniel was right to have that intrinsic knowing that you honor the female, but playing it out in third dimension, when you've got the distorted female, which is the dark Kali, and really Kali is the womb The womb has a consciousness of her own. All she wants is to get pregnant and produce children. That is what she is supposed to do. And she is a separate consciousness to the rest of the female. So a female is often in conflict between the heart, the mind, and the womb. And she has to balance that. So that's a different journey. She doesn't walk across the stream to become the king from the prince, but she still has to embody what you were talking about, Becky, the maiden mother crone or granddaughter, mother, grandmother. That three-way journey is the heart, the mind, and the womb. So if you allow yourself to go into the womb, you'll be manipulative, you will be demanding, especially with your relationships, because you are holding the consciousness of the womb, which is simply to possess the male, because he is the creative force that you need to fulfill your agenda, which is to get pregnant. So everything is intrinsic within. The way out of this, and this is how to heal from all these distortions, you move beyond the earthly mother, the earthly father. That doesn't mean you stop respecting and loving your parents. You honor them, and you can see where they do themselves embody that frequency. But you move to the divine feminine, the goddess. You move to the divine masculine, or the sacred masculine, the God. You're looking at the masculine and feminine forces of the universal, planetary, and galactic structure, and you then link with those. And you can't do this until you are at least in the upper echelons, if you will, of the fourth dimension, using the model the 9 years. There are multiple different models, but fifth dimensional consciousness, awakened consciousness, enlightenment, or kundalini raising, whatever you want to call it. There you go, Daniel, I threw in the word kundalini. You embody those frequencies, and you realize you've always had, as you were saying, Becky, it's with you all the time. You've always had the maternal mother with you, and you've always had the protective masculine with you, but you have to go through this journey on earth as a physical incarnated individual and find that. It's a spiritual journey. It has to be a spiritual journey, and that's ascension as well. If you don't take that spiritual journey, you are not going to find a masculine or a feminine. And so people are looking to their parents, their teachers, their boss, then they'll look to their partner, and you see all this distortion in relationships because they're wanting that from their partner. The female is wanting the divine masculine, the sacred masculine. The masculine is wanting the nurturing, wise woman who gives freedom and love. He doesn't want some manipulative, harpy that's screaming at him. That's because she's in dark Kali. But a wise man, as Becky said, you go in and out of this. A wise man, an awakened man, will know she's in dark Kali right now. She's going to come out of it. I trust she will come out of this, and she will learn. That's true love with one another. And the female is the same. He's gone into the prince. This is the male going back into the immaturity, acting like a little boy. He'll come out of it. He will go back to being the man. So before I finish, I just want to say one thing. It's actually news to me that Daniel used to communicate with other girls in the middle of the night and find this sort of way to talk to the girls that he was, in love with. I knew how he felt about the female at school and everything. What is so interesting is he did that with me. And now I believe I'm probably the first female in his life who actually picked it up. That's how we got together. So he was too, I don't know if I would use the word shy, but, he didn't have the confidence to let me know that he liked me. There is 11 years between us. So I didn't look at him in that way because I thought, well, he won't like me because he's too young. And I was picking up. We're friends for a whole year. And towards the end of the year friendship, before we got together, I'm picking up. And it was almost like Daniel was trying to contact me. I felt his energy around me all the time, trying to tell me something, trying to reach out to me. And my energy was connecting with that, with me sitting there witnessing it all. So I actually said to him one day, well, we're still friends. Before we got together, I actually said to him, I've been sensing you around me. I think I said, have you been trying to contact me? Tell you what, the look on his face. I don't think any woman he'd ever tried to telepathically contact before had ever picked it up. And the look of shock on his face, and I'm sure you told a little fib and said no, or something like that. And I'm sure I said to you, are you sure you haven't been trying to contact me? Obviously, we found out later in the relationship that yes, he did. So that's just an interesting thing to throw in there.
Thank you so much, Magenta, and thank you, everyone. Magenta, you've wrapped that up so beautifully, and I've really loved this podcast. I've loved this conversation, and I think that our listeners will too. Thank you all so much, and I just want us to finish off with Geoff, who's going to sing a song.
Yeah,
Thank you, Geoff.
thank you.
Thank you,
It was
everybody.
a joy for us to be a part of it too. And Daniel, I'd like to hang out with you more. It'd be fun, I think, to have more guy time. You know what I mean? The song that I was going to do is synchronicity, I guess, because Magenta was singing this to herself this morning
with different lyrics.
Yeah,
because she didn't remember.
But the song, I think, speaks to this whole journey. And but hope you'll enjoy it. The Impossible Dream. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, beautiful. And thank you, Poppy, Geoff, Magenta, and Daniel for joining us for this great discussion. And thank you, everyone watching. Have a great day.